So we also started with Africa in the initial part of the episode. Why do you think is, other than rare earth minerals, do you think there's anything else which is inside Africa that most countries are behind?
See, Africa probably holds about 50% of the Earth's total resources of all kinds. There's minerals, there's metals, there's a lot of tremendous amount of fertile land in Africa that can be used for agriculture. For example, much of the world's coffee comes from Africa. Much of the world's cacao comes from Africa. Cacao is the raw material that you use to manufacture chocolate. There's plenty of diamonds to be mined in Africa, especially on the southwestern coast of Africa, the Namibia region, other parts of Africa as well. There's plenty of gold, silver, there's uranium. When the Americans did the Manhattan Project, they brought in hundreds of kilograms of uranium ore from, I believe, Congo or wherever it was, somewhere in Africa. So there's plenty of resources in Africa. And the whole battle right now, Africa is a battleground, geopolitical battleground. And the big powers are vying for influence and control. So you have the Chinese who are involved, you have the Russians who are involved, the Americans obviously going to be involved. They've been involved for a very long time. The French are also involved still to some extent. The French had a lot of control over the Sahel region and the Francophone Afrique region, okay, that region. Now the French are no longer that influential and powerful, but yeah. So everyone wants a piece of Africa. And who suffers? It's the poor people of Africa. They've been suffering for the past 300-400 years, ever since the Europeans decided to colonize and plunder the hell out of Africa. So, yeah, there's a lot of resources to be had in Africa, of all kinds, everything imaginable.
Who is having the biggest control over Africa at the moment?
Overall, the US. Okay. See, it's not like the US has troops in Africa or whatever. What you do if you want to have control over a country is, first of all, you ensure that country has a dictatorship. You can preach democracy and freedom and human rights to the world, but the people you work with have to be dictators. Because if it's a democracy, it's a mess. If it's a dictatorship, you get things done quickly, easily. So you ensure that you install your favorite guy as the dictator in Africa. Okay, you line that guy's bank account nicely. And in return for that, you get everything the country has to offer. Everything that the country has to offer will be available to you. If you are China, you do the same thing. You bribe people. You bribe the local president, a few officials, and in return for that, you get whatever the hell you want from the country. You can get as much copper as you want. You can get as much whatever else is available. Okay, and the Chinese, they also had this policy of doing this debt trap diplomacy. So offer to build ports, offer to build railways for the country, and say that we will finance it. We'll give you big loans. But then the terms of the loans are going to be onerous, very high rates of interest and whatnot. And obviously this poor nation, whatever it is, will eventually default on the loan. So then they say, okay, TK, you have defaulted on the loan, so we will take over this land of yours. This port that we built, it will now be owned by us and operated by us. So that way China can have multiple ports on the east coast of Africa or wherever, where they can send military ships if required, and so on. So that's how they build their areas of influence and areas of operations and so on. That's what China does. But historically, it's been the US and France that have had the most control in the 20th century and thereafter over Africa, especially post-World War II. So post-World War II, you had this period of so-called decolonization of Africa, where the colonizers left Africa. Adio Africa, that sort of thing. But they never really left. They still ruled by proxy. So when you leave a colony, what you do is, okay, I will leave. So my troops will leave. But what I will do is I will install a puppet ruler over there. And that guy is going to rule exactly as if I was still ruling the place. And I will still get all the benefits that I was getting earlier. But now it's going to be the locals who do all the donkey work for me, all the dirty work. So that's why you have so many dictatorships in Africa. That's why you have so many civil wars in Africa. If you look at the map of Africa, you will see that the lines on the map are straight lines. It's because foreigners came and drew lines on the map. And what that does is that it causes civil war. Because Africa, as is the case in every geography, you have various ethnic groups, various populations who have lived there since times immemorial. And many of these ethnic groups and populations don't belong together in the same place, in the same political or geopolitical entity. But if you draw a square on a map, you have different tribes with their own different histories and different cultures who are suddenly part of the same country. And they don't get along. And they have their own rivalries and old whatever it is. And then you install a dictator and you impose a foreign type of government, foreign type of rule on the country. It's a recipe for disaster. So in every part of the world, you should have indigenous forms of government, whatever they are. In Africa, if it is the chief system where you have a chief for a country, well, why don't you have a chief? Why do you need a president or a prime minister? If you have a system where you had kings, well, why don't you go back to that system? Why is democracy the one size fits all solution to the world? Every part of the world should have its own indigenous form of governance. That is the solution to all the mess that we have in various parts of the world. But today we have this thing that the West preaches democracy,
yes,
but it actually implements dictatorships by proxy in various parts of the world that it wants to control.